Hello, I'm Neenah. You are very welcome to my channel. I was watching a crafting video the other day and the crafter used emboss resist as a technique to create a background, and I thought to myself, gosh, I haven't done that for absolutely ages. I used to do it a lot a few years ago. So I decided I'd give it another go. I grabbed some stamps and some inks and I really enjoyed the process. I hope you enjoy watching how I made it. Let's get started. The stamps I used were from some very inexpensive sets that I have in my stash, so I chose those two feathers. The ink, the embossing ink, is Versamark, and I'm making sure that nothing sticks where it shouldn't, so I'm using an anti-static embossing bag. Now I randomly stamped the feathers and I'm putting on white embossing powder from Stampendous. Now you can't see where I inked, but here it is now. Use a paintbrush to get rid of the excess, and I heat it until it's smooth and shiny and melted, and then I'm able to go back in with the big stamp and the little stamp again just to fill in some areas to make sure I've got good coverage. I'm using an inexpensive makeup brush. I'm going to speed up the video, put on some music, and the blending will be finished at 3 minutes. I think this technique creates absolutely beautiful backgrounds. This waffle flower layers die is what I use to cut out a panel. I chose that particular piece, and the die is a Cheery Lynn die, and it cuts out an absolutely gorgeous Dreamcatcher and some beautiful feathers. This is the sentiment from one of the cheap stamp sets I showed you earlier. Now when I was stamping this, it didn't stamp properly because I had a MISTI corner in my stamping tool, and it's a thin polymer stamp, so it didn't stamp properly. But the beauty of the MISTI, I was able to position it with repositional tape and stamp it again. I'm happy with it now, and I'm cutting it out with my scissors, just leaving a nice white border around. I decided at this stage that it would just jazz it up a little bit if I put a silver border on all the pieces that I'm putting on my card. So I tap Versamark ink around the edges, pour on some embossing powder. But even though I did remember to use my anti-static embossing bag, I did have to use a paintbrush too to remove some specks of embossing powder, because this is cotton rag paper, and embossing powder is inclined to stick a bit, so you would need to use a paintbrush. So that piece is done, and I decide to do the same to the edge of the sentiment piece. I cut these out with a scalloped circle die, and I played around with them. I wasn't sure what way I wanted to configure this. So I ended up putting a piece of vellum in between the Dreamcatcher and that dark blue piece on the left. I thought it looked nicer this way. The glue I'm using is Hi-Tack Fast Tack glue, but in a Gina K bottle. I think that's a super applicator. I cut the feathers out of shiny sort of turquoise cardstock. There are some things you can't manage without in the craft room, and one of them is a good glue applicator and a good tweezers. Those reverse tweezers are a must in the craft room. A little bling now, some turquoise gemstones and some diamond ones. And I thought they really finished it off. Isn't that pretty? So at this stage, I decided the feather background needed a silver edge as well to make everything match up. I'm really glad I did that. In real life, it makes a big difference to the finished card. I mat the sentiment on a matching piece of light blue cardstock, adhere it with some foam tape, and do the same with the Dreamcatcher. The card base is a Papermania 5x7 300 GSM weight. It's the one I normally use, and I adhere the panel with double-sided tape. And the last thing I add are some Nuvo jewel drops. These I make on plastic packaging, and they're really nice. They pick up the background colour beautifully. And that's the finished card. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, maybe you'd give me a thumbs up. That's really important for the success of my channel. Would you like to subscribe? Please do. And do leave a comment if you would like to. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. I would love to talk to you. All the best for now. Bye.